It is 6:03 and you are now live.
Thank you, Bonnie. Call to order the Finance and Human Resource Committee. Councilmember Mark Davies.
Here.
Councilmember Scott Harrington.
Here.
Councilmember John Rafter.
Here.
I'd also like to acknowledge that Mayor Gary Herzig is also present, along with other city staff that will announce themselves here in a little bit. Want to call attention to the 2 minutes that were submitted to the committee earlier today. Joe Temin sent us an email out about an hour ago. The January 11th minutes, the header has the wrong date. But other than that, is there any other corrections that need to be made to the minutes that the committee members found?
None from me.
Thank you, John. Scott or Mark, anything of interest? Hearing none, we'll accept the minutes as presented. Moving on to the first topics, we have a water treatment plant laboratory quality assurance stipend that Katie and Greg, please take over.
Thanks, Len. Greg, do you want to talk about this one or do you want me to get started?
Go ahead and get started if you'd like.
Okay, sure. So as you all know, we have a water lab that's housed in our water treatment plant. They do a variety of bacteriological testing, which is a very important public service, not just for, the city. We test our own water, but we also test water for homeowners and businesses and others as needed. Historically, the actual work in the lab is performed by the staff of the water treatment plant. Typically, there's been a lab director or a senior operator or a laboratory technician or some combination thereof that has been responsible for performing the work. We had a situation where, we kind of found ourselves without appropriate staff to staff that function. So our utilities superintendent, Stan Schaefer, stepped in and agreed to be the laboratory director and the quality assurance officer, which are two important functions which are required by DEC.
It's called.
It's the New York State regulatory agency. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's the Department of Health. So the Department of Health has ELAP. It's called Environmental Laboratory Assurance or Approval Program. So our lab is ELAP certified. So these quality assurance officer and lab director they're not city titles, they're designations that are required by ELAP. Sorry, go ahead.
No, thank you. I appreciate that because I can never remember between that and the wastewater treatment plant. So at any rate, these functions have been performed by the staff people. Stan stepped in to serve as the lab director and the quality assurance officer. We're at the point now where we have appropriate staff. The staff has been trained and are comfortable resuming those activities. Not to mention the fact that we've really put a lot on Stan over the last probably year to 18 months, functioning as our superintendent, along with our chief operator, along with our lab director, and also performing some various oversight activities at the wastewater treatment plant. So to make all that, I'm just trying to give you the backdrop here. So what we are asking for would be to award a stipend to an existing staff member for out of title work to be the ELAP certified water laboratory quality assurance officer. Now, what we have paid in the past has been $3,000 on an annual basis. Ginny and I have spoken about this, and there is money available through that budget based on another stipend that was discontinued in the department. So the staff member, his name is Scott Kellogg. He is a very talented laboratory technician, and we would just love to continue to develop his career as well as, set the department up for good succession. Stan has been in his job for literally 40 years. He's got a heck of a lot of knowledge in there, and it would really be great to continue to allow Mr. Kellogg to, proceed along this career path.
So Katie, if I understand this correctly, we're looking at a $3,000 stipend. Monies were already allocated, some results, we're just reappropriating them. They're going to Kellogg, who potentially is in line for the department head's position. Is that correct?
Well, not necessarily in line for the department head's position. It's just that he's the appropriate person to take on the responsibility in the lab. He's the only laboratory technician we have. You know, the water treatment plant is really split up between operators and lab work. So this is the only person that's dedicated to working in the lab right now. And he's the right person. He's very qualified, very intelligent, does a tremendous job. Lucky to have him.
I personally would be in favor of this. I see Mark Davies giving me a thumbs up. Scott? John?
Yep.
Yeah, I have a generalized question, and that's just about stipends in general, like how many we have out there, what do we normally use them? How many, because I thought at one time you were talking about wanting to get away from stipends.
I do, and I think that we have gotten away from stipends. So, I mean, I can't give you a list just off the top of my head. I know that we have reduced or eliminated many of them by reclassifying people into different positions. The stipend in this case is tricky because we have two options. We can either offer a $3,000 stipend, which is the amount historically been offered to the staff person doing this role, or we have to hire a person in a much higher level title to perform the lab director work, including quality assurance. So, I mean, we can hire a lab director, which would be an increased salary of $12,000, whereas this is really the more incremental, budget-friendly approach to just take the pieces of the lab director job that are really essential to be performed right now, carve them out into a stipend, give the gentleman the ability to do them, and then hopefully, move towards him eventually being the lab director after he's had a little bit more time on the job. But yeah, I would think, that's something, Jenny and I could get you a list of all of the stipends citywide, if that's something you're interested in seeing, for sure. So, and just to answer your other question, Scott, stipends are given out for two reasons. The first is if you're working out of title. So if we're asking you to work up a couple titles to take on a few duties in a higher title, then we give you a stipend, with a commensurate amount. The other option, reason for a stipend is if you have somebody who's really covering two desks, which is going to be one of my next items on the list later, with the police lieutenant. So in this case, it's taking higher level duties, assigning them to a lower level, a lower graded staff person, or somebody who steps in and does effectively two jobs for a temporary period of time.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
Sure.
So Scott, ultimately, are you okay with moving that up? Okay. You have a majority. If you would move on to topic B, the waste treatment plant operator trainee appointment.
Greg, I would be looking to you to confirm, but I think we are going to not act on this one.
Yeah, at this point, we're not ready to act on it. We thought we would be, but we don't have a candidate at this point to take forward to council. So you can see it coming up again at some point in the near future, hopefully.
Okay, we can hold on that item. Katie, why don't we move into item C, the temporary fire captain appointment?
Sure. So I will ask Chief Pigeon, who I believe is here, to kind of jump in here. But ultimately, what we're looking for is, as many of you know, with the departure of our assistant chief, we're kind of altering the command structure of the fire department. And based on, just wanting to be sure that we're appropriately, managing fire department operations, we are looking to appoint a provisional captain for the one crew that currently does not have a captain. So right now, the prior structure had been the chief to the assistant chief, and then there were 4 captains. So pretty much simultaneously within about 2 months of each other, one of those 4 captains, Captain Mancini, a very well-respected member of the department with many years of service. We miss him tremendously, but he retired. And then, of course, the assistant chief departed at the end of the year. So based on conversation that the chief has had with the remaining 3 captains, they all feel strongly, from what I understand, that we really need to keep the command structure in place to the extent we can by putting a provisional 4th captain to lead that 4th crew. The person that we're recommending is the crew leader of that crew, Peter Barberio. He has the most seniority of any firefighter in the department. He will be doing those responsibilities anyway, and it's actually a budget neutral change because there is no, it's negotiated in the fire contract that in cases where a crew leader has to step up and perform the functions of a captain in the absence of that captain, they're paid first-year captain pay anyway. So this is really not necessarily a money thing, it's just an operational thing. I should mention that the reason that this is provisional is because there is no existing eligible list from which we can appoint a captain. I had ordered the exam last year. It was canceled by the State Civil Service Commission due to the pandemic. It is pending rescheduling. I am extraordinarily hopeful it will be given late this spring, hopefully April or May, and we will absolutely be participating in that exam and are looking to make a full-time permanent appointment thereafter. So now that I've said all that, Chief, this is really your request, so please feel free to add anything.
Yes, thank you, Katie, and members of the committee. Yes, this has been discussed with the other 3 remaining captains. This also gives that 4th captain's position a title position so that we can accommodate when other captains are off. It gives us a 4th option to substitute that other provisional captain in there. To be fair across the board with 4 of them, with 3, it's very tough to have either mutual swaps or have to change shifts if that necessary. We try to limit that, but certainly there has been some requests from time to time. And also would open up a spot for that additional crew leader spot. There's one of the members on that crew that's doing that job or helping with that job now, kind of untitled, but that'll give him or give the next person in line some experience in running the crew should that provisional captain be off also. So we'll still have a crew leader to work under there. Right now we do not have a title position there, so that's kind of another vacancy that kind of automatically gets filled with this provisional captain's position.
Any questions from the committee? John? Scott? Chief, the only question that I have is, and maybe you can just address it in an email, that's fine, is just the training. Will this temporary appointment allow for you to have training continue on the crew? So if you want to answer that in email, that's fine.
I can say to you that, are you looking for the training requirements for that position or something different?
No, the continued crew training, since this is going to be an extended period of time that that the temporary fire captain position is going to be established, are you taking into consideration the training requirements from the state for the annual training?
As it's a provisional and there is no vacancies, if you're talking about going to flip school, I wouldn't make that a requirement for this position. There is no positions available for flip school. Currently, the classes for this year are filled up. We do have 2 spots come this fall in 2 different classes. I believe it's August and then again in November and December. For that would be reserved for actually a titled position once they take the test and we establish a list and have that next captain go there, then yes, we would be sending them to flip school. That's correct. The training on the crew would be expected. He has been stepped up. He has stepped up as a crew leader in providing training for his crew, and also has utilized one of the state fire instructors, which will now become the crew leader on that crew to offer additional training and continue training on the crew level, if that's what you're speaking about.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. The crew training.
Yep. He's stepped up to do that. He's, like I said, we're working with our state fire instructors to supplement those captains and officers to do that training. So yes, it's a good fit, I believe.
Seeing no other questions, it looks like you have consensus. We'll move that up to full council. Katie, if you want to take over for item or topic D.
Sure. So as you all know, sadly, our Chief of Police, Doug Brenner, has retired. It will be effective in February. I think February 19th is his date, but he had an utter slew amount of accrued leave time. So he's taking some of that time now in advance as terminal leave in advance of his actual official retirement date. That said, as you all know, we are a city of a certain size, so we are obligated to have a police chief, even if it is acting or interim. I think that it is both appropriate and necessary that we appoint someone to that role, pending the formal search process and civil service process. So as to the latter, to the process, the police chief, it is a civil service competitively appointed position. So it's subject to the testing civil service process. It is not an appointed position. So the test is being given on March 6th. So as in many things, Doug had excellent time. So, he left at a time that still allowed me to order the exam and recruit and, get moving on the formal civil service process. So the job is posted. It is being advertised internally and externally, and we're really hoping to attract a lot of good candidates for you to be able to make a selection from eventually. That said, in the past, what has happened if we've had, the departure of a chief, typically the lieutenant is the person who steps up and, performs the job on an interim basis. And, while it is certainly your decision, it is, my strong recommendation that you consider, appointing Lieutenant Chris Witzenberg to that job. He's a good hard worker. He has a lot of, credibility in the department. He's very well trained. And he is the natural pick to take on the job on an interim basis, pending, the formal selection process. So I guess that's my first question, is if you are willing to, accept that recommendation. And then my second question will be, as I just mentioned to Scott, this is one of those cases where we would be required to provide a stipend for additional duties to be performed at the chief's level. If you were to agree to make this happen, then of course the lieutenant would be covering 2 desks for, golly, it'll probably be, so if the test is March 6th, it takes usually about 12 weeks to get scores back and to process the test. That's a civil service in Albany thing. It has nothing to do with the local exam process. So I would be thinking you could probably be making a formal permanent appointment around early summer is my best guess. So if you agree to allowing the lieutenant to step up in that role, then he would be covering, both desks for probably 3 to 5 months.
Yeah, I think it's appropriate that the lieutenant steps up into this position on a temporary basis until the new list comes out. But kind of going along the lines of what we were just talking about with the fire department, who's going to fill his shoes when he uses any of his accrued time or his sick time? How's the structure in the department set up for that?
So I think that the structure in the police department is a little less rigid than in the fire department. So, you have a very talented pool, not that this is no commentary on the relative talent of the fire captains. We're all lucky to have them. They're 3 wonderful people. But we have a very talented, strong pool of sergeants who kind of step up if the chief or the lieutenant are out now. And I also think one thing that's kind of putting us in a pretty good position to handle the transition is that we currently have 1 sergeant who is on a light duty assignment and assigned to an administrative capacity. So that sergeant has done really a tremendous job by stepping up and helping the lieutenant and the chief with, various administrative responsibilities that otherwise would get done by the sergeants or the chief and the lieutenant or some combination thereof. So I would have to really defer that question to the lieutenant for a more specific answer. But I would imagine that all of those duties would function between, the sergeants and also the administrative sergeant. I also should say too that, for those of you who have worked with Lieutenant Witzenberg know, as well as I do, that the man is a workaholic. He is always, 2 steps away from his phone. I get emails from him at 2:00 in the morning and 7:00 on a Sunday morning. So I don't think he would ever, especially for this interim period, be too far away from his phone or be unable to be contacted. So that's my best guess.
Thank you for that answer. Committee members, any objection to moving this proposal up to full council? John says no. Scott, Mark says no. Unanimous to go up to full council?
Okay.
Moving on to, thank you, Katie. Moving on up to the rental lease agreement for OPT Transit Hub. I believe, David, you're up.
Yes, thank you. OPT is asking the council to renew the lease for its transit hub at 104 Main. We were able to negotiate a 2% increase when 4% was asked. This is a 2-year extension versus a new contract, which would have been 5 years. So we felt that it was better in light of what's going on to only go for 2.
Hey, David, what did we pay in 2020? What was the annual?
2020, I think was 16. Ginny, was it 1650 or 1600? Right around there. I don't have that number. I happen to have this year's, but
Dave, hold on
Yeah,
a
I was
second, I'll
looking-
look it up.
I was looking for the annual.
yeah, it was like 19. I want to say it was like 19.5, but if I'm not.
In the interim, is there any other questions for David? John and Scott have said no. Mark, was there any questions from you? Or I'm sorry, Ginny, what was that amount?
The annual amount is just over 19,000. So if it goes up.
It's
to-
not much of an increase then to get to the 19,640.
So it's only $385 for a 2% increase.
Right. Hearing no objections, we'll move that up to full council.
Thank you.
Ginny, did you want to talk about item or topic F, the Adirondack Trailways rental
Yes,
agreement?
thank you, Jan. Yes, thank you. We had discovered that the lease had expired and we need to extend it. I have been in contact with the Adirondack Trailways representative, Ann Noonan. They have read over the proposal that I shared with the committee members and they support it. We just need one minor correction in the agreement as far as where they're located. The old agreement said they're in the west, they're now to the right, so we can easily modify that. But we're suggesting a 2% increase for the year 2021 and 2022. We only want to go for 2 years because of the transit hub construction and to leave our options open for what will happen with that change. And they totally understand that and are in agreement and have assured me that even after the transit hub is built, they don't plan on leaving us. So I was wondering if the committee agreed with the 2% increase, and Dave has reviewed the contract and he's signed off on it.
Questions for Ginny on this contract? Ginny, I actually went down there and I looked at both the OPT Transit Center today and the Adirondack Trailway space just to kind of get a sense of it, considering we're dealing with the transit center proposal. And I noticed when I came back, I read our rental lease agreement for the OPT that will no longer require the landowner to provide janitorial services. Is that correct?
Is that for OPT, David?
Yeah, that's for OPT. And
So they're no longer-
they've never had clean since I've been there. That was in the previous contract.
Okay.
We had cleaning staff, and we still do. We do our own cleaning.
Are we in charge of the aesthetics, the paint and tiles, or is the landowner in charge of that?
Well, we've replaced tiles, we've painted, we've done everything, and to the point where I don't believe we'll be replacing any more tiles because we get leaks in the roof, and then they don't want to replace the tiles again. It's just, it's a big wheel. So.
David, to reverse that around on the space for the Adirondack Trailways, are we responsible for the aesthetics?
I have nothing to do with the Trailways building. That's on Greg.
Yeah, I can speak to that. Yeah, we own and maintain that building. You know, Trailways is just they just lease the space. So, you know, we've had a lot of issues there with roof leaks. We actually moved Trailways to their side. It used to be vacant because the side they're on, they had, you know, 4 or 5 buckets all the time with the parking garage ramp above and leaking through. So we actually moved them over, but we've been spending minimally on that, knowing that there will be changes coming with the transit hub upgrade. So we're just keeping them going, and they haven't been really complaining as much as I would if I were them.
That answer, Greg. I appreciate the honesty. I hear no reason why we can't move this item up to full council for. Jenny, did you want to go on to topic G, the budget transfers?
Sure. As you know, if you read the narrative, there's quite a list, so thank you for your patience ahead of time. My first one is for final pays. And the city has employee benefit reserves for final pays. And as I've told council members before, our reserves are not to sit idle. The state will look down upon that if they were ever to get into the detail of it. We set the reserves up for use. So this particular reserve has not been used in quite some time. So I would like to propose that we do budget amendments for not all of the final pays that we've had during 2020, but some of them. And I would like to propose the city clerk, the fire department, and the water administration and the sewer administration. And for the amounts that I indicated there, for the general fund, it would be $20,300 for the city clerk, $28,900 for the fire department. That covers 2 retirees there. The water administration would only be $700, and the sewer administration would only be $1,400. That way, we fulfill our duty of using some of the reserves, and we also cover the budget transfers that we need.
Right, and this was your plan through the 21 budget, right? If I understood that correctly.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm.
This is what you had intended on doing through that process.
Yes. I just wanted to wait until the year closed to make sure how many retirees we were going to have, and just to look to see how the final numbers turned out due to vacancies and things like that.
Okay.
Are there any questions on that one?
Hearing none, we'll move it.
Okay. And I just want to mention that for the next ones that are coming out, vacation buyouts are budgeted based on history, not eligibility. If we were to budget for every vacation buyout that people are eligible for, our budget would be quite a bit higher. So what I do is I study the history of by person to see how often vacation buyouts happen, and I just basically budget an average. Also with stipends, when a stipend is awarded during the year, a budget transfer is not always presented for council approval immediately, depending on staff changes or permanent appointments and things like that. So I usually wait a while to see how things are going to turn out. Having said that, the city clerk staff receive vacation buyouts during the year, and they also receive stipends for additional duties. So you'll see the budget transfer there that I'm able to do mostly within the city clerk's department, but not quite all of it, to cover additional payroll costs associated with the stipends and the vacation buyouts.
Any questions for Jenny?
Okay.
Scott, did you have one?
No, I'm not sure I quite understood what she just said, but my volume cut in and out, so I probably missed half of it.
Do you want me to repeat it?
No, I can just contact you and
Okay,
you can explain it.
all right. Is everybody able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. All right. In personnel, again, we had staff that received stipends for additional duties, and this transfer I was able to cover within the personnel department entirely. And it's for the same thing, just moving expenses from one sub account to another, or I should say budget amounts, not expenses. Okay.
Questions?
And then shared vehicles.
Mhm.
The central garage services for the shared vehicles, those are the basically the 2 out-of-town cars. And as you know, the electric car for the past 2 years has been cut from the budget. And we're using a very old vehicle right now that's requiring a lot of maintenance. Also, one of the out-of-town cars will be replaced once OPT receives their grant-funded vehicle.
Mhm.
So, but in the interim, one of the cars is requiring quite a bit of work. I don't have the December expenses yet for the central garage services, so I'm doing an estimate of $7,000. And I'm basically just asking you to transfer from vehicle maintenance from DPW to the shared vehicles.
Jenny, why don't we do it this way? With regards to the shared vehicles, the snow removal, the water transmission and distribution, the sanitary sewers, wastewater treatment plant again.
Mhm.
Turn to the committee members. Does anyone have a question or a concern that they would like to present to Jenny? Those topics. Scott, you're the only one that hasn't shook your head yet. You're good? Hearing none, we'll approve of these and we'll move them to full council.
Okay, thank you. And I also want to just make a note for the record that additional 2020 transfers will be coming as more accounting work is finalized and more numbers are looked at. I have a handful, not a lot, of transfers that I have done for under $1,000. I just wanted to try to give you a complete report instead of bringing it back to you more than once. So that will be forthcoming. The 2021 budget transfer that we need, as you see in my narrative, 2021 budget is extremely tight. We don't have a lot of funds to move between accounts, especially this early in the year. We don't know what projects may or may not be completed and things like that. So the next budget transfer to fulfill the city prosecutor's current contract, I'm going to ask for a budget amendment to appropriate fund balance for an additional $15,000. And as I said in my corrective narrative, for the other type of costs, we're working very hard to be able to get it to be no cost for the city. So hopefully I won't have to come back to you again, but I will keep you posted on the progress for any type of software or cloud storage expenses.
Any committee members disagreeing with moving this item up to full council? Hearing none, we'll move it.
Okay, and then unfortunately there were 2 items that were erroneously omitted from the 2021 budget, which I'm again going to need a budget amendment for. And that was for our Nixle services and our internet services. I have taken measures so this will not happen again for the 2022 budget. So my apologies for this omission. And again, we will need to fund these. And again, I will be asking for fund balance.
So Ginny, where are you going to pull the funds from for it?
I'm going to ask for a budget amendment to increase appropriated fund balance for right now. As we go forward and see how our year works out, we'll be able to modify things, but not this early in the year. If you want me to wait on this one, I can.
Well, we have a contract for internet service.
Yes, we do. But what I'm saying is that the funds are not in the red yet because we're so early in the year. So
Right.
I was just getting prepared.
Right. So we borrowed or we utilized what, 1 million from the unrestricted fund balance to balance our budget,
Correct.
and we're just adding another 8,000 onto that, correct?
Correct.
Is that it?
Well, no, the 15,000 for the prosecutor, and then the 8,000. So it would be the 23,000.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome. So that covers all of the budget transfers. If you don't mind, could I manually add on to the agenda, Len, for discussion?
We haven't done the surplus items yet. Is there anybody that has an objection to any of the surplus items being moved out? Hearing none, we'll also move that up. So the budget transfers and the surplus items will move up to full council. And Gary's going to talk about the pilot. Go ahead. What did you have, Jenny?
Okay, just two more budget transfers. One really will not need a transfer because of the current vacancies, but we will need for the motion to approve the lieutenant being acting chief, there will be a dollar amount to be approved for his stipend. We won't need to do a budget transfer or an amendment for that right now because we will have the funds because both the chief and the lieutenant were fully funded for 2021. But I just want you to know that there will be an additional amount in the motion that will be presented to council.
We'll be approving of that stipend. What we talked about earlier.
I'm sorry.
Is there anyone? Where'd Scott go? There you are. Did you have a question? Scott? Okay.
No, I hit the wrong button and hit the video button. Sorry.
Mark or John, you guys good with okay, good. All right. Sorry, Jenny, go ahead.
And then the last budget transfer for 2020 at this moment for you to consider again, I did hear back from our auditor partner as far as justification. And I overquoted the adjustment last meeting. I had mentioned about $3,500. It came in at $3,050. And he told me what had happened in comparing the different years of audits is that in 2019, there was about an additional 50 hours required versus the 2018 audit and the 2017 audit. Only because, two very, very good reasons. One was efficiencies in trying to do it remotely, added hours. Also, they did have savings of about $2,500 for travel expenses, but the amount of time put in by staff far exceeded the $2,500. But the most important thing is that when we got the contract with Bowling Cheney and Trine, it was 5 years ago, that bid was based on doing fund financials, not full GASB 34 financials. GASB 34 financials requires a lot more work, not only on their part, but also on the finance office part. It's a lot more accounting, it's a lot more testing and things like that. In 2018, George approved paying them an additional $3,000 for the 2017 audit. The 2018 audit, it went very, very smoothly. They did not have to require the amount of hours that they normally would. So there was no discussion as far as adjusting the price. And because of that, I'm sure that the next bid contract, we will see the audit going up because it is going to require a lot more since we're doing full GAAP, doing the GASB 34 instead of just fund financials. So for those reasons, I'm asking you to consider the additional $3,000.
Committee? Mark, you look like you have something you wanted to say.
Thinking it through.
And I don't need an answer tonight. If you guys want to think about it and let me know. And Paul also wanted for me to impress that we have been an excellent client with them and they will understand a yes or a no, and then we'll just move forward. So I don't want you to think that, he's putting strong pressure on me. He's not. This is just a respectful request.
Mm-hmm. They're in their last year, right? So they'll do our 2020 taxes or review.
Yeah, they're going to do our 2020 and then we're going to go out for RFP and then we'll do competition again for it. And this time we will do the bid based on full GASB 34 financials. And just for a point of interest, they still have a handful of clients, municipal clients that have not completed or filed their 2019 report just because of all the challenges that they've had for COVID. So I'm very pleased that ours got done. Mark?
Thanks, Jenny. Question for you. So this, and I'm sorry, I don't understand all the accounting language, but the Gatsby report that you said they did not factor into their proposal that we added on, was that at our request that they did this particular accounting procedure, or was that?
Well, let me just give you a little bit of history. We used to do GASB 30. What GASB 34 is, and I'll just put it in a real nutshell, it's taking governmental fund accountings and making it look more like business accounting. That's what it's doing. We opted out of it after doing it for 5 years because it's such a large amount of work. So we went back to fund financials. Well, GAAP got a hold of the concept of a lot of municipalities were doing this, so they stopped allowing the auditors to issue us good opinions. And they said, no longer will we accept this, as you will now get an adverse opinion instead of an unmodified opinion like we got. So we were forced back in to doing GASB 34 starting back in 2017. We already had a 5-year contract with BST at the time. And those bids that they had given us were based on fund financials, not the full GAAP financials. And GAAP is the governmental accounting, governmental accounting standards board. So that's what the GASB is.
So my thinking is, having written proposals and been on the short end where I underestimated the amount of time and then certainly had to put a lot more time in it at my expense. It sounds like this was something that we required to have changed, and it was not something that the company didn't allocate for. So because of the fact that they wrote that proposal in 2015, I would support paying them that additional fee, because again, this was a change on our end and not a change on their end.
John or Scott?
Mark, I missed that. Can you repeat that for me, please?
Sure. Am I cutting out or?
No, I think I'm having problems with my headphone. Mine's cutting in and out. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because Mark, I heard you clearly on that, so.
Good. So in these kind of proposals, when you put it forward, oftentimes you can underestimate the amount of time it will take to accomplish the proposal. In those, frankly, I would say that's on the company. They underestimated what it took. That's on them. In this case, it sounds like we required a change in the accounting practices, as Jenny just indicated, which took a little bit longer than it would have normally have taken in terms of normally what they proposed for their 2015 RFP. In my mind, this is on us, and this is something that was a change that I don't think it's any fault of the company, and it wasn't an underestimation of their time, as I understand it, Jenny. So that's why I'm inclined to say yes to this.
Jenny, Mark, thanks. Jenny, why did George approve the 3,000?
That was the first year we converted back to GASB 34, going back to the full GAAP financial statements. And again, that year they put in a tremendous amount of extra work, and George approved the increase.
John, any thoughts or concerns?
Well, largely, I agree with Mark.
Yeah, I think this is new information that Jenny brought forward with us when we were presented this bill a couple of weeks ago, is that we asked for a difference in accounting procedures. And hearing that, I see no reason why to stall this out at this level. It's obviously more involved than originally bid out for. It was us that requested the change. And I guess at some point the $3,000 is the difference in labor. So.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. I think it sounds like the last two things after it was written, we asked for more, and I got no problem. I think we ought to push it up.
Okay. Hearing none, the fee from BST of $3,050 for the 2019 financial report will be added to the council agenda. Jenny, you want to go through the rest of your narrative, right? You have ambulance revenues.
Or we could, however you want it to go. If you want the mayor to do the pilots next, that's up to you, Lynn.
Mayor, are you under a time crunch? Okay. Jenny, why don't we just keep moving through? You can explain the projections that you have down here for ambulance and mortgage tax.
Okay, thank you. The sales tax, I'm very happy to report that the November sales tax was up from compared to 2019 by over 32,000 or 6.7%. And year to date, we are still lower by about 383,000, but we are now at 8.2% lower versus the over 10% that we were last time. So that's very good news. The state aid, per a NICOM notice that the mayor shared with the council on January 21st, there is some good news that 95% of the 20% that they withheld on our state aid payment will be released, and we should have it by March 31st. So that means that the city should receive 424,000 of the 446,000 that was withheld. So that again is very good news. However, in the same notice, there was a reduction, or there may be a reduction for 2021, depending on if the state receives any federal aid. However, we anticipated that in our adopted budget, so that is fortunate for us. So if we do not receive that reduction in the state aid, we will have additional funds for 2021. So any questions on the state aid or the sales tax?
It's not really additional funds. It's making us whole from what should have came our way in 2020. So
right. Well, what I'm saying as far as additional then is that we didn't budget for it, thinking that it was going to be a cut in aid we received. That's what I mean by the additional.
No, I agree. It's just okay.
Ambulance revenues. 2020 ambulance revenues are currently estimated to be about $685,000 for 1,696 calls. This includes a little over 30,000 that the city received from CARES funding. And the 2019 ambulance revenues were about a little over 961,000 for 2,130 calls. The calls are down by 434 or 20.3%. And the revenues are down by about 276,000 or 28.7%. And the reasons are complex as far as the combination between calls and revenues, but it's due for a number of reasons. One is COVID, and there was also the type of patient that was transported, the type of coverage that the patients had. And due to COVID, the activity was down. The type of patient transported was largely affected by hesitation to call the ambulance or lack of students and visitors and travelers and activity within our area. And also there were other ambulance transport companies in our area during COVID or because of COVID. So it's a combination of all of those factors that have affected our revenues. These numbers will change once I look at collectability of our year-end balance. So they may go up or down just a little bit because I'll have to adjust the allowance for bad debt. But do you have any questions on that?
Yeah, Jenny, what did you project for revenue off the ambulance for 21?
Let me check. I want to say 675,000 is what comes to mind, but let me just double check it. Oh, I'm sorry, 725,000.
Okay, so in this trend, we're gonna fall short of that, right? Am I understanding this correct?
I think with the with more activity and now with some of the students being back, I think that for 2021, the 725,000 is a solid estimate. Okay. I'm hoping that we will do better on that. But I cannot, obviously guarantee it.
No, you don't.
I think
you don't have a crystal ball. I understand.
Right. Yeah, but I think it's a good target. And you got to remember that 2020 was drastically affected in March and April. So also, I believe that the other ambulance services, Chief Pigeon, if you're here, you can confirm this, but I think that that has calmed down in the area. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, that's correct. The county has gone back to dispatching the home department. So other than having multiple calls and mutual aid needed, then no, we're doing all of our own transports.
So I'm pretty confident that we will reach the 725.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Mortgage tax?
The mortgage tax, I just wanted to let you know that we had an increase in 2020 over 2019. We went from 129 up to 142, and the 142 is 22,000 greater than our budget. So I just thought that was, people are, I believe, with how hot the market is right now, and also with people are, I think, benefiting from the low mortgage rates, so they're refinancing. So that benefits us as a whole. The water fund, the 2020 metered water sales is currently 128,000 below budget. And however, if you remember my one-time adjustment that I've talked to the council about, this will be adjusted once we do the 2021 annual billing. So I'm assuming that at least the 128 will actually be eliminated, if not more. Last year, the annual adjustment was over 300,000 for the water fund, which I was not able to adjust the records by, but that's what I'm hoping to be able to do this year. This will just be a one-time item, a one-time adjustment. This won't be year after year, because that was the purpose of being able to get the billings out by February 15th. However, the college meter sales are approximately 296,000 under budget. This may be adjusted slightly by a corrected billing that Greg and I are working on at the moment, but we're hoping that in 2021 we'll be not back to normal, but we did budget for decreased revenues, but I'm hoping it won't be the $296,000 figure.
Questions? So when you say you're going to adjust it, how are you adjusting it? Is that moving unrestricted fund balance to cover it?
No, you mean adjusting as far as the metered sales revenues?
Correct.
Is that your question?
Correct.
In the
Build the budget, right?
In the 2021 annual billing, there is the minimum, which is the prepayment for the first 37,000 gallons that will be used during 2021. But also in that billing is anybody who went over the minimum for 2020. And because we're able to change our billing cycle by what we passed in December, I will be able to capture that excess billing and actually record it in 2020. And then I will be able to do it each year after and record the 2020 sales or the current year sales in the current year. And this will also, as we get into quarterly billing citywide, this will also be automatically done, because December will be recorded in that year. So this is a one-time adjustment, both for the water and for the sewer fund. The water fund's over 300,000. The sewer fund's going to be over 200,000. So it's also a very healthy adjustment to our fund balance on our financial statements, and it will, as I said, it's a one-time adjustment. So it will benefit the city and the financial statements for both the water and the sewer fund.
Okay. Any questions for Jenny? Hearing none.
Okay, the sewer fund is similar, except the sewer fund, because most of our sewer clients are through the city and not with the town, the revenues are a little bit different. Most town residents have septic systems, or they're on the town sewer system instead of the city sewer system. So the sewer rents for the sewer fund, the current ones currently are only about 36,000 below budget. And again, this will be adjusted by that one-time adjustment for the 2021 annual billing. But the college sewer rents are about 299,000 below budget. Again, this should be adjusted slightly, but not a lot for our corrected billing that Greg and I are working on.
Okay. Any questions from the committee for Jenny?
I just want to let you know that I'm unable to report on the estimated expenditures in total at this time. We still have a lot of accounting work that we need to do. But as those numbers get more finalized, I'll be coming back to the committee and to the council as a whole. And I would like, within the next month, I would like to give a full estimate of how 2020 closes out. At a quick glance on the expenses, I want you to know the department heads did an excellent job in savings. So I'm very optimistic that I'll hopefully, I don't want to hold my breath for solidarity, but I'm hoping that I'll have a really good report for you.
Looking forward to it. Jenny, is that all for you for tonight?
I believe so. Just checking my notes. Yes, I believe that's all I have, then. Thank you.
Mayor, you're up.
Hi, everyone. This is in regard to the Lofts on Deed Street project. New York State Real Property Law 581A allows for a different method of assessment for affordable housing than it does for other properties. The reason for this is that because affordable housing greatly restricts the amount of rent that can be charged, the amount of income that is realized by the property owner is considerably less than it would on a regular market rate rental property. The difference is that instead of assessing the property by the value of the structure on the property, it can be assessed based upon the income level. There are two ways of assessing properties: income basis and property basis. Assessors can typically choose which basis to use. However, in the case of affordable housing, the owner has the ability to use the income basis at all times. The income base assessment is approximated. I think you were sent an independent assessor's approximation based upon the units of that structure and the rents that are going to be charged of somewhere in the neighborhood of $61,000 a year. I don't mean the assessment of $61,000. Based upon the income-based assessment, the taxes would be approximately $61,000 a year. Ken Carney had approached us, back a year and a half ago or so, stating that his lenders prefer to have a predictable tax rate all throughout the duration of the time that they're financing it, as opposed to ups and downs for budgeting purposes. They're more comfortable with a stable tax rate. So George Kortauer conferred with our assessor, Rich Maxwell, and Rich Maxwell came up with a number that he was comfortable with, be $70,000 a year, which, as you can see, is considerably higher than Ken would be paying if he went straight with the 581A income-based assessment. So in order to make this happen, what the council would need to do is two-step process. The first step is to declare the property tax exempt. The second process would be to sign an agreement of a payment in lieu of taxes of $70,000 a year on that property, with a 2% increase every year. Questions? Yeah, Mark?
Thanks, Mayor. How long is that pilot for? Is that for the lifetime of the building, or does that have a time?
I'm thinking 30 years. I could be off a little bit on that. It's based. I'm sorry.
Gary, yeah, it is. It's 40 years, Mark.
40 years. Okay. Here's the way it works. When you build an affordable housing project like that, you make a commitment to keep those units affordable housing for a certain number of years. So the owner of that property that property must remain affordable housing for that given number of years, whether it's 30, 40 years, whatever it may be. So the pilot would coincide with the requirement that the property remains affordable housing. In this case, in the agreement, I think it says 40 years, Len says. And it'd be a 2% increase every year. So we're actually coming out considerably ahead than if he went the 581A route, which he said from the beginning that he's happy to pay more than he would be required to, but his lenders require a flat, predictable tax rate throughout the duration.
Questions for the mayor? Go ahead, Scott.
So if we go ahead and declare this property tax exempt, that's going to be forever, correct? That's not just for the 40 years.
That's a question I have to get an answer to, Scott. I don't believe so. I don't believe that's the case, but it's a good question, and I'll get an answer to for you.
Okay, thanks.
John?
Yes, Carrie, would you just repeat the initial rate for the pilot?
$70,000
Thank
per
you.
year with a 2% annual increase.
Any other questions, John?
None.
Okay. Mark, you good? Scott?
Yeah, I think it's just better off being discussed at the whole council versus trying to go through us and then go back up to the council for more.
Okay. So hearing no other objections tonight, this topic will move up to full council. Is there any other? I'm sorry, Gary, go ahead.
That's all I got.
Okay. Is there a need for an executive session or any other items? Katie?
Sorry. Listen, I sincerely apologize. I apparently was not forceful enough when I was speaking about the appointment of the acting chief. We do need to have you approve a stipend amount if you're willing to do that, so I can have something to put in the motion. I sincerely apologize to go back to that topic, but.
Well, you said we approved the stipend. You just didn't tell us what it was. So you could have actually gotten none of this unscathed. So.
Oh, but I'm sure you would have pulled it right off the agenda, Mr. Carson.
Yes, I probably would have.
Well, and rightfully so. You have to take me to task here. I'm not trying to do anything, get anything past you. So that said, I mean, it is a significant amount that I'm going to suggest to you. So. So in 2017, when Chief Brenner stepped in and did perform both roles, the council allocated a stipend of $15,758.
That was annually though, right? That was for 12. That was for 12 months.
Well, Jenny, how long did it take? I mean, I don't know how long he actually had it, but he didn't get that full amount because again, it's put into like his hourly, like his base, and then it gets divided out over each pay period.
Correct. That annual stipend, when you approve an annual stipend, it's only in effect for whatever time period. So if you approve a $15,000 annual stipend and they only get it for, 3 months worth, that's all they get. They don't get the full 15.
Right, that's my point, is I was trying to understand it in monthly. Because potentially, someone's going to be appointed by June, July, I think, is the hopeful date.
That's what I'm hoping for. So, I mean,
Right.
of course, barring anything unforeseen, the full amount wouldn't be realized unless he were being and doing both jobs for a period of a year, which I can't imagine that would actually happen. So I think a similar amount would be fair. I think Chris is worth, $1 million. I mean, I think he does a great job. I think he's, taking on the department at somewhat of a difficult time. We have several staff vacancies. We don't have a negotiated contract. I mean, there are a bunch of challenges waiting for the department right now for Lieutenant Witzenberg to pick up. So I would love 20, but I will settle for 15. It is a similar amount to what Doug was provided. And I think it's fair and representative of covering both desks.
So we're 15,000 divided by 12 to give us the amount, right?
1250.
Yeah. So the stipend per month is 1250.
1250, yeah. You do math faster than me. I apologize. I'm not a numbers person.
Solar calculator was right there. John, Mark, Scott, any objection? No. Unanimous. It wasn't that bad, was it, Katie?
No, sir, it was not. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry I didn't get it out in the first time. I'm sorry. I should say too that Ginny and I discussed this at length this morning, and the amount will be covered by what's budgeted because we have so many vacancies in the department. Correct, Jenny?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much.
Unfortunately, we're 4, right? Aren't we down 4 officers right now?
4, Chief Brenner is 5.
Yeah, so this is the marketing. I really want to know from Chris what we can do to help them out in getting out there and marketing for candidates to take our entry-level examination for police.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that he wants to come before this body in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So be it, but I'd like to know because given the track record just in 2020, I think we started out with 3 candidates in the academy, and I don't think we got anybody, right?
One.
Okay.
And she just finished her field training, so we have one more officer. But it's tricky. I mean, we do have this year, and Chris and I will be coming to you probably, maybe not in a couple weeks, but probably the meeting after to make hiring recommendations. We're going through the civil service process now. It's a phenomenal candidate pool this year. We are very, very fortunate. So we will be coming to you with more information to follow. But certainly I will follow up with Chris and let him know you've asked for him 2 weeks from today.
I would love to hear from him and maybe the committee members too, his ideas on recruitment of potential candidates for his department.
Got it.
Thank you. If there's no other items that need to be added,
I'm gonna be
we're having technical difficulties, Scott. I can't hear you, Scott.
Yeah. I'm going to kind of be a pain. We need an executive session for the negotiations. Please.
Negotiations.
Yes, please.
I will second that. Bonnie, can you put us into a separate group?
We're working on it right now.
And so that would include Katie, the mayor,
The mayor and the count on park committee.
Bonnie, are we live?
Yes, sir, you are.
Hearing no other items to be added onto our agenda, I would ask for an adjournment.
Second.
Okay. All right, everybody. Have a good night.